I found that I keep being drawn to this the same one text that was the greatest surprise, and it's still a surprise to me that we had all of these various statements, most of them interviews, a lot of them on Al Jazeera, the satellite TV station from Doha, Qatar, and I've written about in the introduction about how the career of bin Laden as a public personality and Al Jazeera as a major satellite television network intersected. And without that intersection, you wouldn't have him as a public figure that he is today. But one of the things that came up in Al Jazeera that surprised even me was a sermon from bin Laden that was given on one of the highest ritual days in the Muslim calendar, a time called Eid al-Adha. And it was a sermon where he identifies himself as simply the person who represents the best case for Muslim interests around the world. And by the way, one of the other things that, before I read this, that people have often said is it really true that you can agree with bin Laden's analysis and hate his actions? And I said, I hope so, because that's where I find myself. In other words, a lot of the things that he analyzed being wrong with the world, saying, isn't it really amazing that the Muslim world has been carved up into these different principalities that are mostly under foreign rule, and shouldn't there be some way of moving not only to democracy but also to justice? And if you have freedom without justice, do you really have a just world order? So to the extent that he reflects that image, which he does, yes, I'll say this, I agree with him. But then when you move from that analysis to the prescribed actions to correct, I separate, and I separate dramatically and oppose him. But one of the places where he appeals beyond the heads people who are rulers and people who are scholars and people who are Muslims different from him, and to those who are really disaffected, is through his use of poetry. And some people find this I found this the most astonishing part. Not only is he a good writer and speaker, but Abdel Sattar knows this better than I, he also uses poetry. And it's not all poetry that he's quoting from other people, Mutanabbi or Jahid or people from the Islamic past who are great poets. He sometimes writes his own. And this one poem that comes at the end of the sermon, the only sermon we have, at least in the work that I did, the sermon that has been publicized, is one that he ends with this poem. So let me be a martyr. That's another word we didn't translate. Obviously, most of you would know the word martyr is shaheed. So he uses this very strongly valorized word, shaheed or martyr. So let me be a martyr, dwelling in a high mountain pass. Chances are that's Afghanistan, the Tora Bora. Among a band of knights, I think that's Al-Qaeda, who unite in devotion to God, descend to face armies, and that's us. But then he shifts, and the most remarkable thing about him is the way he sort of uses what would be first person, singular, let me be a martyr, to then a collective, third person, plural, when they leave this world. So he's suddenly gone from being this solitary martyr to being a whole band of people who leave this world, they leave trouble behind, and meet their day of judgment as told in scriptures. So he becomes not only the vanguard of revolution in this world, but the vanguard of those who find a better world beyond. Now, do I agree with this? No, but do I find this really kind of artful poetry? Yes. So if I have to read or include for you one passage that to me shows both the art and the artifice of bin Laden, it would be that passage that comes on page 205 at the end of what's number 19 in this book of 24 messages to bin Laden.